Trump turned his head just slightly, that the bullet missed him just enough to save his life to be the next president of the United States.
For this song,
we have believed for so long that God will make some changes in this country, and he's about to make a change in the current administration and send them home. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. Tonight we make the decision on what's right for America. More prosperity, less gas prices, less food prices, help for our veterans, and God bless our military wherever they are in these United States and abroad. There would be no wars.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again. Just my children.
and there it is, remarkable to see the 45th president of the United States walking on the floor of the convention. You can see that his right ear bandaged after being grazed by a bullet just 48 hours ago. You can hear now many of the delegates and attendees here are singing along with this song. There you see the president being greeted by close supporters, including Tucker Carlson and his family in the VIP family box there. Many of his family were instrumental in pushing Senator J.D. Vance to be the vice presidential pick. And that's our first shot of the two of them together. Lee Greenwood just saying, "You will not take this man down." Robert Costa.
A moment where former President Trump is visibly showing some emotion. This is someone who so often is projecting political confidence. The last time I've seen this kind of expression, I've covered him for a long time, was on election night 2016, when he seemed to be stunned by victory, now taken aback clearly by the reception here at the Republican National Convention, opening night. A former president recovering from an assassination attempt. The crowd on its feet, cheering former President Trump. There with his running mate, just 39 years old, J.D. Vance, presenting a generational contrast. This has echoes of other moments in American history. 1981, when President Ronald Reagan shot and came to crowds months after recovering. But this is beyond parties. We've seen Democrats like Gabrielle Giffords, Republicans like President Reagan shot. Resilience is a part of the American character, whether you are Republican or Democrat, carrying on. Tonight, former President Trump does just that. Day one of a convention, back to politics, but also a human moment as well.
And such a critical one for the country to see the former president having just survived an assassination attempt in a public setting. There's lots of security here, of course, the highest security levels you can have in the country right here. But seeing him in public around people is significant for the country to see.
And Nora, it's worth pointing out, and I think Robert made an excellent point about the look on former President Trump's face.
He looks emotional.
Softer, more emotional, less aggressive than he typically does in face of a partisan crowd. That, I think, is being absorbed by this crowd and the nation writ large.
John Dickerson, your thoughts?
Well, you all have covered this extraordinary and dramatic moment. I would just note one other comeback by the former president. There was a time after the riots of January 6th where the Republican leaders in the House and the Senate blamed him for lying to the country and leading to that attempt to disenfranchise 81 million people. After that, there was a period where many people thought that's the end of Donald Trump and in the Republican Party. Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, who spoke so fulsomely about Donald Trump tonight, ran away from Trump when he ran for governor in Virginia. Then in 2022, when Trump's candidates didn't do very well, people thought, well, that's really the end of it for Donald Trump. Before the tragic events of Saturday, it was already an extraordinary story that Donald Trump, who had been vilified by the leaders of the Senate and House in his own party, came to a convention that is as unified as anybody can think of in modern memory. That was the comeback that existed before this physical and emotional one we're seeing right now.
Chance now, we love Trump. And there was also chance of fight. Remember, that is what former President Trump yelled as he left the rally stage in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. Now they're taking his seat. He was raising his fist in the air just as he did on Saturday after that assassination attempt.
This was also a crowd that is moved as well, many of them holding up their phones, taking pictures, some of them emotional, seeing Donald Trump for the first time as well with his bandaged ear. I want to check in with Tony DeCopel, who is on the floor of this convention. Tony?
Nora, I am in the friends and family section. The vantage point I have is of about 5 seats in from the Trump box. I can see the former president and the Speaker of the House and J.D. Vance and the future of the Republican Party there, as well as what they hope will be the next president of the United States. I watched his approach, and sitting right next to me is Brenda here. Brenda's from California, San Diego, and there are tears in your eyes right now. Tell me what you're thinking.
I'm speechless. I'm looking at a man who has sacrificed so much, been through so much, been scrutinized, drugged through the mud for this country, and all of these people are here for him. And the fact that he's here is just, I find it overwhelming and touching that he's not hiding, he's not scared, he is ready to defend our country and take it back. I'm just so honored to be here and to be in the presence of all of this, and normally I keep it together.
It's okay. I think this is the intended effect, and you're not the only one I've noticed with tears in her eyes. And Nora, folks up there in the box, there was a lot of excitement. The phones came out of the pockets in this area of the arena. But there was a lot of somber reflection as well. You could see the cheers, you could see the shouts, the applause, but also the sense that it could have been otherwise. And that's why you see the crying here, the emotion from Brenda, and why you have a sense of significance that has entered the room that might not have been here otherwise. And in fact, we know for certain that typically a candidate does not appear on the first night of their party's convention. But here we go. Everything changed on Saturday, and we are seeing that change in the Trump family box with the former president himself right at this moment.
Tony, thank you very much.
There's a specialness to this moment, obviously, for the Trump family, people who know the former president very well, but also for the American democratic system. When President Biden addressed the nation from the Oval Office just the other day, he said American voters should make the final decision on who wins the White House. The ballot box is where decisions are made, not by those who use weapons and political violence. And you see tonight in day one at the Republican National Convention, a country, a party moving forward in the wake of this wound of an assassination attempt. And that's something that is moving people here inside the arena in Milwaukee, perhaps across the country.
And Nora, Tony's interview with Brenda from my hometown of San Diego exemplifies something which is important to understand about Trump's relationship to the Republican Party and the Republican Party's relationship to Donald Trump. Many Republicans like Brenda believe that former President Trump has been overly scrutinized, has been hounded, has been vilified. Whether that's true or not, that's what they feel personally. And they believe he has gone through this not only to be a political actor, but on their behalf. And they feel a connection to him that transcends ideology, party labels, or anything, and this is my conversation over and over and over with Trump supporters, than they ever felt for any other political candidate in their lifetimes. Brenda's tears are a reflection of that emotional connection that is more than political. And in this moment, it is highly visible and totally genuine.
Let's check in now with Ed O'Keefe, who is also on the floor of this convention. Ed?
Nora, I'm with delegates from Pennsylvania who were at the rally on Saturday when the former president was shot at and dodged that bullet. State Representative Leslie Rossi, thank you for spending a moment with you. I watched you make the sign of the cross as he entered the room and stood up there.
Because it's a miracle. I mean, God has his hands over Trump, and I am so emotional just to see him here with us this evening. When he went down, there was a calm over the crowd. You would think in such a situation like that, you would see chaos and screaming, and that wasn't the case at all. I was right there. I was right near the stands where individuals were shot, and they were bleeding, and their Dr. Sweetland was administering aid, and we were looking at our president on the ground, and we didn't know his situation or whether he was alive or dead or what. And when he stood up, I couldn't hear what he said, but I just saw that fist and I said, that's my president. He's a fighter. He is doing this for us, and we just really respect and admire all that he's gone through. It's tremendous, and it's not how it should be.
No, we shouldn't have violence at our political rallies at all.
Not
absolutely.
on any level, because you know what? My mom's a Democrat. I don't even think she votes for me. But she's a Roosevelt Democrat. She's 97, but we live in the same household. And so we get along and we function. And so in my office, I help Democrats every day. They respect me. I respect them. We work together. And that's where this country has to get back to.
You told me you were there for so long before the former president took the stage that you have photos of the crowd, and you realized that you have photos of the man who was killed.
I do.
And you'd seen him before it happened.
I had seen people up in that section. I more so noticed Dr. Sweetland because he had a white shirt on that said USA, and he was.
That was the emergency room doctor who helped.
I didn't know that at the time, but he was in the middle of the stands, and he was waving and smiling, and he was with another gentleman who had a white beard, and they both had white shirts on. So they stood out to me. You're sitting there for 4 hours in the hot sun. So obviously I did notice them, and then when we heard the pop, 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 it wasn't very long after that I saw him go.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play.
From God. I just believe God has his hand on him.
Tom King from Butler County as well. You were there as well. You saw, you were at the event, right?
Yes, I was. I had the pleasure to meet with the president about 10 minutes before he was shot. It was a terrible day. I'm from Butler County, Pennsylvania. It was a terrible day in Butler. Evil came to Butler County. My prayers go out to the family of Corey Comparatore, who was lost, and the other victims there. It was a terrible day, and what otherwise started out as a wonderful rally for the president to support him. We were gravely concerned that the president, whether the president was going to survive. The crowd was frozen, waiting to see if he was going to survive, and when he did, it was a blessing.
Quickly, I'm curious, 2 days or so since that happened, how should the Republican Party conduct itself now from this week into November if it wants to win the White House back?
I think the party has to be a big party. It has to be a big umbrella. The Republicans stand for lots of people, little people, all across the United States. and the party has to coalesce around Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. We have a wonderful ticket. They stand for things that are right in America. We have to get America right again, and that means retiring Joe Biden.
Nora, as we toss back to you, one of the things we'd heard a lot about from delegates is the resolve to win in November after what happened on Saturday, to take the resolve that the former president, they believe, demonstrated in the moments right after the bullet grazed him and turn that into a victory this November. We've seen laughter, dancing, clapping, joy on the floors of conventions for years. I'd not seen tears, signs of the cross, and sort of stunned amazement at the presence of the former president tonight as he was here. Nora, back to you.
Ed O'Key with those revealing interviews from delegates who were at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Ed, thank you so much, and so interesting to hear from them, and certainly about this now even more emotional connection that they have with Donald Trump. Want to just point out that speaking right now is Amber Rose, who is probably most well known for dating Kanye West and is a media personality. It's an unusual choice to speak here at the Republican convention on a night like this. We're saluting and seeing Donald Trump for the very first time. We have not seen the former First Lady, Melania Trump, tonight, or Ivanka Trump. It's not clear whether they are here. We just have not seen them in the booth. But Donald Trump tonight appearing emotional in many ways, and as he makes his first public appearance since the assassination attempt. Let's listen in just for a moment to Amber Rose.
And I believe the left-wing propaganda that Donald Trump was a racist. My father said, "No, he's not, Amber. What are you talking about?" And when I insisted, he said, "Prove it." So to prove my father wrong, I did my research and looked into all things Donald Trump. People have to do their research. I watched all the rallies, and I started meeting so many of you, his red hat wearing supporters.
Joining us now is the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. Governor, good to see you.
Nora, thank you so much for having me with you. What an exciting night. How about when President Trump came in? This place just erupted.
I know. What did you see? What did you feel? You were down there with the delegates?
Yeah, so first of all, the whole day has been filled with anticipation and excitement, and it represents this moment of, yes, unity. Unity for the party, unity for the nation. And you can feel the spirit of hope literally spreading across not just this huge arena, but across the country. And that's what it feels like. And you could see everyone standing up and cheering. How exciting that he's here tonight, and how exciting it is for everybody to be able to tell him that they're so thankful that he's safe and that he will lead our nation.
How have you been able to speak with him personally yet?
Yeah, I spoke with him yesterday. And I first told him that Providence is real, and that he was a millimeter away from a very different outcome, and he knows that. And he acknowledged that he was going to speak about unity, and this is a moment to bring the whole nation together. And then he encouraged me, rewrite your speech too.
He did.
And so this is a real statement about a moment in America where we get to reflect on where we are and where we want to be. And we don't want to be where Joe Biden's had us. We don't want to be in a moment of weakness, of foreign policy weakness or economic weakness with chaos at the border. We know that we can bring common sense back to America. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as our vice president will do exactly that. There will be economic strength. There will be foreign policy strength. We'll have a secure border, and America will be strong again.
Mm-hmm. How well do you know Senator J.D. Vance?
Not well at all. Not well at all. I'm very excited about his choice today in J.D. Vance from the president. I think he will be a tremendous running mate, and he'll be a great vice president. I mean, let's be serious. He fought for our country. He understands what it means to be pulled up by your bootstraps, and he fights for prosperity. He's going to be a great running mate for the president.
You're from the state of Virginia, the great Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you.
And before the last couple of weeks, We looked at the polls. It's not a battleground. It has been a purple state in years past. How do you see it moving in recent weeks?
Well, of course, what we've seen even before the debate was that Virginia was locked up tied.
For the Democrats.
Locked up tied. Locked up tied between President Trump and Joe Biden. And that was before the debate. And of course, what that reflects, I believe, is the same sentiment that when we were fortunate to win in 2021, the idea that Virginians want an economic future that's bright and strong, and they want to make sure that their children can go to schools that teach their children how to think, not what to think, that we back the blue, that we stand for our military. I mean, this is the America that Virginians want, and that's why I think that the weak leadership from Joe Biden is being reflected in strength with Donald Trump in the polls, and Virginia's in play.
Mm-hmm. Major Garrett is with us as well.
Governor Youngkin, you mentioned a moment ago that what happened on Saturday was, from your vantage point, a providential moment.
I do.
I know many delegates that I've spoken to believe exactly the same thing. Thomas Jefferson talked about the separation of church and state. Articulate for the country, as best you can, a providential moment, but also maintaining that separation of church and state.
Well, first of all, I am led by my faith. And Suzanne, when I asked her to marry me, said yes, but our faith has to be at the center of our marriage. That's the way that we live our lives. And as I serve as governor, I don't check my faith at the door. It comes into every decision with me. It's part of who I am. I do believe that's one of the reasons why Virginians trust me, is they understand the basis by which I'm going to be making decisions, which is something bigger than myself. And I believe that there is not a message by separation of church and state that we are to be unimpacted by our strong belief that there is an almighty creator who endowed us with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is America. And in fact, faith and God are infused into our national soul. What it does mean is that we don't force people to practice a certain religious belief. In fact, we protect it. We protect it in our First Amendment that you can practice your own religious belief the way you want to. That's America.
Governor,
and I think that's why it's so important for us to remind ourselves of that every day.
Governor, can I ask you, as someone who has had a successful career in business, you want Virginia to be the place where everybody comes to do business. There have been a wide number of economists who've said that Donald Trump's decision to place tariffs on so many goods will actually be a tax on middle-class Americans. Can you respond to that?
Let me just first begin that Virginia last week was named America's best place for business, and so I'm very honored and was very excited about that. Virginia's doing great. We've had record job growth and $74 billion of capital commitments from companies, and I think that's reflective of the hard work that we're doing. Listen, economists project lots of things, and I believe that
tariffs will raise the price of goods, and that will affect consumers.
I believe that what President Trump is doing is staking out a very strong position that free and fair trade must be reciprocal, and that in fact we will make sure that we have free and fair trade as a country. And let's just pick one country, China. China is not a rival. China is trying to dominate the world, and they're trying to do it at the expense of the United States. And for too long, we allowed them to have open access to the U.S. market without any kind of counterbalance from America. And when President Trump struck the China trade deal and imposed substantial tariffs on them, it was a critically important statement that we're going to stand up for free and fair trade. I believe that's what he is going to stand up for in his next presidency, is that we will have free, fair, and reciprocal trade, but it has to be that. It's not just sell your goods in the United States and do not worry about what we do to your goods when they come overseas.
Well, thank you for answering that question. There's no doubt there will be a continued debate about the economic policies of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, what tariffs mean. I think the American people would love to have a debate about the issues, which we haven't really had yet. There's been so much going on. Governor Youngkin, congratulations to the state of Virginia.
Thank you.
On that new recognition.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being with here.
Great to be with you. Thank you all very, very much.
And speaking next is Sean O'Brien, president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, an influential labor union. And that is the first time a Teamsters president has addressed the RNC. The Teamsters have yet to endorse Trump or President Biden in this year's election. So let's check in with Ed O'Keefe. And Ed, why is Sean O'Brien going to be the keynote speaker?
Because it's not every day that the leader of a major labor union addresses a Republican National Convention. In fact, in the case of the Teamsters, it's never happened before. But Sean O'Brien will be here tonight as the union considers its first ever Republican presidential nomination, or at least its first in several years. They've made five-figure donations to both parties this year because there are members who believe that the union should consider endorsing Donald Trump after their concerns with the economic policies of President Biden, and yet there are many other members of the Teamsters tonight furious that Sean O'Brien will be here. Either way, it's a coup for the Trump campaign as they continue trying to cut into different elements of the Democratic Party's umbrella. Organized labor, black and Latino men, the young, women as well. If Sean O'Brien, as he begins his remarks here, can convince his members to vote Republican and keep battleground states, Trump might win the White House again.
Let's listen in to Sean O'Brien.
I'd like to give my peeps from the greatest state in the nation, Massachusetts, some props. What's up? First, I want to thank the hardworking Teamsters and union members here in Milwaukee who play vital roles in the building and operations of this convention. I also want to thank President Donald Trump for opening the RNC's doors to the Teamsters Union and inviting me to speak before you tonight. I travel all across this country and meet with my members every week. You know what I see? An American worker being taken for granted. Workers being sold out to big banks, big tech, corporates, and the elite. And I'm not the only one who sees this. Everyday families see it. The American people aren't stupid. They know the system is broken. We all know how Washington is run. Working people have no chance of winning this fight. That's why I'm here today. Because I refuse to keep doing the same things my predecessors did. Today, the Teamsters are here to say we are not beholden to anyone or any party. We will create an agenda and work with a bipartisan coalition ready to accomplish something real for the American worker. And I don't care about getting criticized. It's an honor to be the first Teamster in our 121-year history to address the Republican National Convention. Several months ago, I asked the RNC and the DNC for the opportunity to speak. To be frank, when President Trump invited me to speak at this convention, there was political unrest on the left and on the right. Hard to believe. Anti-union groups demanded the president rescind his invitation. The left called me a traitor. And this is precisely why it's so important for me to be here today. Think about this. Think about this. The Teamsters are doing something correct. If the extremes in both parties think I shouldn't be on this stage. President Trump had the backbone to open the doors to this Republican convention, and that's unprecedented. No other nominee in the race would have invited the Teamsters into this arena. Now, you can have whatever opinion you want, but one thing is clear. President Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices. And I think we all can agree, whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB. Now, when I won the presidency of the Teamsters in a national election 2.5 years ago, we started reaching across the aisle. In the past, the Teamsters have endorsed GOP candidates, including Nixon, Reagan, and George H.W. Bush. But over the last 40 years, the Republican Party has really pursued strong relationships with organized labor. There are some in the party who stand in active opposition to labor unions. This, too, must change. And I want to be clear. At the end of the day, the Teamsters are not interested if you have a D, R, or an I next to your name. We want to know one thing. What are you doing to help American workers? As a negotiator, I know that no window or door should ever be permanently shut. In my administration, the Teamsters reached out to 8 Republican senators who stood up for railroad Teamsters over our fight for paid sick leave. Josh Hawley was one of them. We started talking. Senator Hawley changed his position on national right to work. Then we started walking. Senator Hawley walked a Teamsters picket line in St. Louis and a UAW picket line in Wentzville, Missouri. More than that, I want to recognize Senator Hawley for his direct, relentless, and pointed questioning of corporate talking heads, lawyers, CEOs, and apologists. He has shown he is not willing to accept their pillaging of working people's pocketbooks. I know from a career in negotiating that you get nowhere by slamming your fist on the table. The first step is to listen. The Teamsters and the GOP may not agree on many issues, but a growing group has shown the courage to sit down and consider points of view that aren't funded by big money think tanks. Senators like J.D. Vance, Roger Marshall, and Representatives Nicole Malliotakis, Mike Lawler, and Brian Fitzpatrick are among elected officials who truly care about working people. And this group is expanding and is putting fear into those who have monopolized our very broken system in America today. There are far too many people on both sides of the aisle still caught up in knee-jerk reactions to unions, who subscribe to the same tired claptrap that unions destroy American companies. Take a moment to consider United Parcel Service, which is the largest private sector logistics company, and it's been unionized for more than 100 years. More than 350,000 Teamsters make it run. We work for good middle-class wages, quality health care, and secure pensions. There are work rules that ensure fairness and due process for both sides. UPS is the most efficient package delivery company in the world. But let's not forget that UPS doesn't provide these great wages and benefits out of the kindness of its heart. UPS does it because the Teamsters fight for it, all 350,000 of us. You know, corporatists hate when working people join together to form unions. But for a century, major employers have waged a war against labor by forming corporate unions of their own. We need to call the Chamber of Commerce and the business roundtables what they are. They are unions for big business. And here's another fact. Against gigantic multinational corporation, an individual worker has zero power. It's only when Americans band together in democratic unions that we win real improvements on wages, benefits, and working conditions. Companies like Amazon are bigger than most national economies. Amazon is valued over $2 trillion. That makes it the 14th largest economy in the world. What is sickening is that Amazon has abandoned any national allegiance. Amazon's sole focus is on lining its own pockets. Remember, elites have no party, elites have no nation. Their loyalty is to the balance sheet and to the stock price at the expense of the American worker. In my office in Washington, D.C., I can see the United States Capitol from my window. I see well-intentioned people arrive in Washington and get eaten up by an unforgiving system. The responsibility to average Americans takes a back seat. The objective now becomes survival. Fundraiser after fundraiser, corporate consultants hedge every initiative. The Hill crawls with lifers, bouncing from government jobs to corporate jobs and back again. I think we can all agree D.C. is a pretty treacherous area. Most legislation is never meant to go anywhere, and it's all talk. And in America, talk isn't cheap. It's very expensive, and it comes at the cost of our own country. Working people know our system is broken. The elites are not laboring on behalf of workers. There is a political caste system that prevents citizens from accessing their representatives to hold them accountable. For a moment in time, working people in America were seen as essential. Sadly, it took a global pandemic for political and corporate elites to notice this fact. But ask yourself this question. Since the end of the pandemic, when was the last time you heard major news outlets regularly refer to workers as essential? You haven't. The men and women who provide goods and services, deliver packages, stock grocery shelves, care for patients, pick up your trash, and keep our communities safe are taken for granted. All the while, the stock market booms, housing prices hit record highs, and corporate salaries skyrocket. But the income of everyday Americans are shrinking in the face of inflation. At the gas pumps, at the grocery store, with the electrical bill, and with the car insurance. This has got to change. Never forget, American workers own this nation. We are not renters. We are not tenants. But the corporate elite treat us like squatters, and that is a crime. We've got to fix it. Now, this will shock you. This will shock you. To paraphrase Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, it's time for both sides of Congress to stand their butts up. We need trade policies that put American workers first. It needs to be easier for companies to remain in America. We need legal protections that make it safer for workers to get a contract. We must stop corporations from abandoning local communities to inflate their bottom line. We need meaningful bankruptcy reform. Today, corporate vultures buy up companies like Yellow Freight with the intent of driving them into bankruptcy and feasting on their remains. The courts leave workers begging for crumbs as third-tier creditors. Labor law must be reformed. Americans vote for a union but can never get a union contract. Companies fire workers who try to join unions and hide behind toothless laws that are meant to protect working people but are manipulated to benefit corporations. This is economic terrorism at its best. An individual cannot withstand such an assault. A fired worker cannot afford corporate delays, and these greedy employers know it. There are no consequences for the company, only the worker. We need corporate welfare reform. Under our current system, massive companies like Amazon, Uber, Lyft, and Walmart take zero responsibilities for the workers they employ. These companies offer no real health insurance, no retirement benefits, no paid leave, relying on underfunded public assistance. And who foots the bill? The individual taxpayer. The biggest recipients of welfare in this country are corporations, and this is real corruption. We must put workers first. What could be more important to the security of our nation than a long-term investment in the American worker? In 2021, Teamsters nationwide elected me to fight for them, and that's precisely what I'm doing. Something is wrong in this country, and we need to say it out loud. I will always speak for America and the American worker, both union and non-union. I challenge each and every one of you, and especially my friends on the Democratic side, to embrace cooperation, to truly collaborate, to achieve meaningful and productive change, to ensure we make this great nation in this world the bigger, faster, and strongest nation in the entire world. I love this country. The Teamsters love this country. Our 1.3 million members move America on the roads, in the ports, on the rail, and in the air. And at the end of the day, if the powers to be stop me from raising my voice on behalf of American workers, I will not have one single regret. I still carry my commercial driver's license. I still have my place on the union seniority list. You'll find me back in Boston driving a tractor-trailer, delivering equipment for Shaughnessy and Ahern, because I have the protection of a union contract that gives me the freedom to speak my mind and to fight like hell. God bless the greatest nation. Thank you very much.
Well, extraordinary remarks from Sean O'Brien, who is the general president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. This is the first time that a leader of such a storied union like this has addressed a Republican convention ever, and made some stunning remarks about working class people. And I want to bring in Major Garrett on this. Major.
First thing he said that really revved up the audience was that after the weekend event, Donald Trump is clearly one tough SOB. Huge applause line. But I think what will be recorded historically, Nora, is this is the most aggressive and certainly the longest anti-big business speech ever delivered at a Republican National Convention, which explains part of the populist politics of Donald Trump and how it has changed the Republican Party at the grassroots level and how it may change the Republican Party going forward with a running mate like J.D. Vance.
But he was bashing corporate profits.
Corporate profits, corporate greed,
and yet,
resistance to work rules, resistance to higher wages.
But Donald Trump wants to lower again the corporate tax rate.
From 21% to 20%.
His tax policies in 2017, this This is a fact. Benefited the wealthy more than it benefited working class Americans.
By percentage of wealth gained from those tax cuts, absolutely. But he also had aggressive trade policies. Robert Costa has talked about this many times, that those in the labor movement or those who are white blue-collar workers saw as more responsive to their consternation over decades of trade policies that they thought were harmful to their economic future.
This is going to be the heart of this debate for this presidential election, because people are voting with their paychecks, with their pocketbooks, I should say, because they feel like their paychecks are smaller and they feel like they're paying more for basic goods. We're going to talk more about this in just a moment. Ahead, more from CBS News coverage of the Republican National Convention.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make
What
sense?
have you learned?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This is CBS.
Welcome back to CBS News coverage of day one of the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump has made his first public appearance. You can see his right ear bandaged following that attempted assassination attempt, sitting there with his family after listening to the keynote address. I want to check in with Tony DeCopel, who is on the floor of this convention. Tony?
Hey, good evening, Nora. You know, I've been to Florida, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Colorado, Michigan. I was looking for a Teamster, any member of the union, from that keynote address from Sean O'Brien. Did not find one, which might say something, but I did find a union contractor here from Iowa. It's Gary Leffler. He works with a lot of union members, and you were seriously enjoying that speech. Tell us what you thought.
I thought the guy had really captured the moment. I mean, he hit all of the bullet points. He knew exactly what he was talking about. I was just at a family reunion, and those guys are all union workers. And they said every one of them is voting for Trump because they just said, hey, we have more month than money at the end of that time. And interest rates are just killing these union guys. And the economy, as it shrinks, has hurt more and more people. I would talk to one guy that built 150 homes in the Des Moines area. He's building, last year, when Trump was in president, he built 150 homes. This year, he's building 8. And that affects all the people that are providing material and appliances and everything else to those houses and to that economy. And in Iowa, there's a shortage of housing. But not only a shortage of housing, but a shortage of affordable housing. So that's a real crunch.
You know, Gary, when I first spoke with you, you said that speech hit it out of the park and they're never going to find the ball. But then when we went back up for analysis there in the booth at CBS, you know, there was a feeling that when you think about Republican national conventions, traditionally, this is the party of big business. And that might have been one of the most significant anti-big business speeches in the history of Republican conventions. Did you hear it that way?
I heard it as not necessarily from that angle. What I heard was, hey, let's take care of the American worker. You know, it's kind of like when the American worker does well, then everybody does well. That's good for families, it's good for communities, it's good for everything. And, you know, like even when you go into the school districts, which are, you know, they're primarily a union-type facility.
They sure are.
And they can't hire people because the minimum wage, they can get a job at McDonald's for $18 an hour, and the school can only hire and pay them $14 an hour.
Gary, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a storyline. It's a storyline we'll keep following, Nora. Back to you.
Tony DeCopel with those great interviews from the floor. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear from many of the president's supporters who have come up their perspective about what's happening with the economy back at home. Let's bring in CBS News political contributor Terry Sullivan, as he was Senator Marco Rubio's presidential campaign manager in 2016. And Terry, what did you make of that remarks from the president of the Teamsters? We noted here a pretty anti-corporate speech talking about sticking up for the workers and certainly union workers in America.
Look, Nora, this is not your father's Republican Party convention. You mentioned 1996. I was at that 1996 convention. I think I think we had Lee Greenwood there as well. But to have not only a Teamsters leader, a union member, giving the keynote, but before that, a rapper and a reality TV star. This just shows that Donald Trump is able to expand the playing field and do this in a non-traditional way, to go out and get new groups, new segments, and not to just the traditional Republican groups and the blocks of voters, to go out and get to workers, to get to different groups of people, to really draw them into the Republican message. And it's different than it used to be. And it's a very aggressive approach. And when you're in a strong position like the Trump campaign is now, they're going to go and try to go into traditional Democrat territories and pick up votes.
And Joel Payne, Democratic strategist, is with us. And Joel, we have heard from Joe Biden's campaign, who says Donald Trump was the worst president for workers ever, saying that Trump's current policies would trigger a recession by mid-2025, eliminate more than 3 million jobs, and add $2,500 in taxes for working families, and inflict an inflation bomb, in part because of those tariffs that former President Trump has talked about imposing on foreign countries like China.
Yeah, Nora, you used the word extraordinary. I think I would use cognitive dissonance, not just with Mr. O'Brien's speech, but with the entire night. Very good rhetoric, very good words. Donald Trump did not govern in this way, and he's not talking about governing in this way. I think it's an effective way to show off what you hope that the Republican Party can project, but it does not match reality. What matches reality is that Donald Trump historically has not been someone who has been a fan of the worker. He's been a fan of big business. And I think you're going to hear President Biden and Democrats really lay that out in the coming weeks and months.
Joel Payne, thank you. Let's take a moment to listen to what's happening here inside this convention hall. The music. Donald Trump shaking hands with many of the delegates. You can see surrounded by a number of Secret Service agents. And I've covered presidents. I've been on the road with them. They always have a lot around them. He has more around him. Even Barack Obama, there were many threats against his life. He was surrounded. This is an enormous amount of agents. We'll be right back.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gailey has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents.